Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm a GNU.
Agadoo.
What do you know? Loch Ness. That's all I'm saying. Loch Ness.
Loch Ness. Well, another week. Here we are. The Benji and Nick Show. It is number, I think it's 41. I'll double check. I've started, so I'll finish. We are on number, Facebook will load, 41 of the Benji Nick Show.
I've been locked out of Facebook. I can't remember my password, and suddenly, it's asking me to log in, and I don't know what to write.
Madness! It's all gone wrong, Nick.
So I don't know how to get around that. Really, I can never go on Facebook again.
I said, well, it wouldn't be a bad thing. You know, I'd like to never go on it again, really, but we're stuck with it. So this is the Benji and Nick Show, and what do we do on the Benji and Nick Show, Nick?
Well, we talk about cult TV, and we spontaneously nominate a particular program from the past, and we decide to watch it in the intervening week and then talk about it in the next podcast. We also talk about what we've been watching this week, and we read out your emails sent to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. Does that explain everything, Benji?
I think that does, Nick. And this week we're discussing London's Burning, which
is like your most favourite thing in the whole wide world.
Yeah, London's Burning and Doctor Who are like the two, and Catweasel maybe are like the things I love. So mayhap. But London's Burning, I really hold it close to my heart, and this is the one we're doing because for those who don't know what London's Burning is, it's a long-running. It's no longer running, actually. So it was a long-running TV drama. It burnt down, which you could argue is a bit of a soap. But it started in 1986 with a TV movie, and from there on, it became a television series. So what we're discussing here is the TV movie, which we'll be talking about later. Oh, the door is opened. A delivery.
What? Oh, sorry. Steph wants her key back. She's just been to pick up Ben from school. Yes, there you are. Hello, Ben. Didn't want to speak much. Anyway, back to the world of dreams. London's Burning.
Indeed. Well, before we talk about that, though, we usually kickstart this podcaster blammo with our what have we been watching this week? Nick, what have you been watching this week?
Well, nothing new really. Public Eye. Just carrying on.
Lots of walking down alleyways and with long coats.
Yeah, so that, and also got back into the Sandbaggers again last night.
Jolly good.
I did. What did I mention that I think I did mention this. The Mrs. Wilson. Did I mention that last time?
I don't think so.
Mrs. Wilson, starring Ruth Wilson as a woman who, in 1967, I want to say.
I saw this advertised.
Yeah, her husband dies, and then she finds out that she wasn't his only wife. He used to work for the Secret Service in World War II and beyond, and he seems to have had several secret lives. It was quite a good episode 1. I haven't watched episode 2 because I'm waiting for my wife to get around to finishing episode 1 so that we can have a experience of watching television together, which is always a mistake, but there you go.
Be quiet, shush, shush, shush.
Where she's always trying to guess what's going on and saying out loud, I think that the dog did it. Yeah. Anyway, that was one of her suggestions once for something. So now whenever we watch a thriller, I always turn to her and say, did the dog do it? Because it turned out not to be true at all.
Oh,
I think it was Silent Witness or something. There was a dog hanging around all the time. She said, I think the dog did it. I said, don't be ridiculous. The dog didn't do the murder.
At the end of it, we are arresting Mr. Ruffles for murder. Several, you can imagine it. Well, they can't pick things up. Kind of maybe a knife in the mouth or of a careful
Well, she was thinking
administration
that it
of
had
poison.
knocked something over and that it had fallen on someone or something. Who knows? I don't even want to remember the detail. Anyway, so the Mrs. Wilson thing, the only thing I will say about it that's troubling me, and perhaps some of our listeners with their specialist knowledge of everything can write in and clear this up. Ian Glenn plays the late husband. There are lots of flashbacks with him, and he's in Army Intelligence, not Naval Intelligence. And he wears a khaki uniform and a peaked cap and everything, but he has a beard. I don't think army officers are allowed to have beards, even now.
I don't think only the Navy, isn't it?
Only the Navy. If he was, and I think it's that Ian Glenn, being an actor of some note, refused to shave his beard off. And they just went with it. I thought, but if you just made him Naval Intelligence, it would be fine to have a beard.
Yeah, because beards for the Navy, moustaches
For the army.
facial hair, moustaches for the army, mainly the RAF, was you could have moustaches down to a certain point, which is why they always grew them really big. It's a sort of tongue-in-cheek joke, that. But yeah, the army, I don't think so. That'd be, write in if you know. For any of our armed forces listeners who are out there, that'd be great.
Indeed. And Steph said to me, oh, well, it doesn't matter now. Sure. I said, well, maybe things have changed even now, but this is set in 1967 and previously, so it has to... I hate it when they get things like that wrong, but hopefully I'm wrong in thinking it's wrong. It's a very nicely made series anyway. So that's what I'm watching. I don't think I saw Ready Player One. Did I mention that before on the plane?
Oh, yeah.
That was a bit... I want to show it to my son, but it's got lots of inappropriate things in it, like a whole ocean of blood from The Shining and some tingling genitalia. So, but essentially, it to me seems like a kid's movie.
I think the book is meant to be a kid's book, isn't it?
But the film is slightly too adult in places. I'm having a real dilemma about whether to show it to Ben or not. Because he would love it, because he's mad about virtual reality and stuff, and that's what Ready Player One's all about, isn't it? Going into a virtual world and living out your lives there. Anyway. And I also watched a bit of Blade Runner on a plane as well.
Oh, classic. Good old Blade Runner.
Actually, I'm completely lying. It wasn't Blade Runner, it was Alien. But it's also by Ridley Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of those, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
There was
I didn't watch it till the end. I ran out of time, but
there's always quite a good selection of old films on planes, I find.
Well, certainly on American Airlines, they seem to be bigger on the nostalgia. Yeah,
I was on United, and they had a pretty good selection of old things.
That's good. Yeah, yes.
Well, I mean, so if it comes down to what I've been watching, I have been watching more of The Good Place. Really into that, cruising through it now, catching up, which is good. Just gets better and better and better. But you've made me think about my plane viewings. I watched. Have you ever seen War Games, the 80s film?
Yes, of course. I saw it when it came out at the time.
Surprisingly good film, actually.
I remember it being lots of good fun. Yeah, it's a kids' movie about averting Armageddon,
and it works quite well. You know, it's quite a good little message at the end. You know, it's all about how nobody wins a war and all that sort of stuff. But I liked it.
They'd never make a film like that now. You know, people would complain about it, wouldn't they?
I think they probably would. The irony, I think they would, though. I think they would.
I know.
It would be too much for people to handle. But certainly, I thought what a great fun film. You know, and it had great 80s music and lots of fun sound effects in there. I was well on the plane. I watched a little bit of Dr. No. And I think we discussed that, though, because we were saying how it sounds really old-fashioned and...
It's like a 50s movie. It's not a 60s movie at all, Dr. No.
It's a weird one, that. And the only other thing I've watched, really, because I've mainly been watching The Good Place, is I watched The Day After, which was on Talking Pictures TV.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen that since it was first broadcast.
It's an interesting one because it's
quite dull beginning, isn't it?
It's a very dull beginning.
There are lots of real people in it, not actors, doing all the military stuff, isn't there?
It's pretty much the same as Threads in that regard. I mean, I'm a big...
But they came out at more or less the same time.
And weirdly, they've kind of got almost exactly the same way of tackling the problem. I didn't think it was as effective as Threads.
No, it's a bit too polished, isn't it?
It's a bit too polished and a little bit. It has some silly moments of. It feels a little bit more sort of theatrical and sensational than the grittiness of Threads by the BBC.
Well, Threads is almost unbearably gritty, isn't it? I mean, I could never watch Threads again. It was so upsetting.
Yeah, I've seen it quite a few times, but it is hideously upsetting.
Weirdo.
I know, I'm a freak. It's coming out on Blu-ray this year, I think, actually. Not that I'm going to buy it, but you know, but watching the day after, I was intrigued because I'd never watched it originally. I always just watched Threads. It was
repeatedly.
It was forever. It was good, you know. Same message, and it really. War is pretty damn nasty. War is hell. War is hell. I did quite like the bit though where the bomb goes off and you can see people's skeletons that are silhouetted, and it looks. Of course, that is in reality. That is exactly what you would see. You would use. There's that famous thing of when the bomb went off, somebody held their hand in front of the distant bomb, and they could see their bones. With their own eyes. So although it was accurate, I think it was just because it was the time it was made, it looked a little bit silly.
The effect wasn't done very well, is what you're saying.
Well, the weirdest thing is I think the effect was done quite well, but it just looked. I can't explain it. It was just maybe just a little bit naff, I suppose. Like,
if it's realistic, what?
Well, it's as realistic as drawing a skeleton on a freeze frame. You know, the skeleton.
Right, so it wasn't done very well, is what you're saying.
I'd say it wasn't done well enough. It could have been done better, but it was done all right, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Not really. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I saw it and thought that looks silly, so maybe it wasn't done very well. We're going round, and I can just keep going. Oh, I can just keep going, Len. I'll just keep saying it. I'm not driving a mini metro. So that is what we've been watching this week.
Yes. Emails.
Oh, if you say so. Nick, if you'd like to do the opening to the emails, where can they send them to?
Oh, well, you can send them to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. And this first one is from Richard Black. And the subject is Thanks, Public Eye and Suggestions. And this was sent on the 18th of November at 17:18. So, yes, it's 18 minutes past 5 in the afternoon. From Richard Black. Dear Benji and Nick, thanks for the podcast. A very welcome listen on my drives to and from work. It's always great to hear Nick's praise for Public Eye. I watched the first complete series, the one set in Brighton, about 13 years ago when I just moved to Brighton myself, so I have an extra love for that series. But even ignoring that, I found it to be one of the most compelling programmes I've watched. Can only agree, by the way. One of those things where a description never really does it justice. You have to experience it for yourself. It's true. A lot of that is down to Alfred Burke's performance as Frank, but it's worth crediting the main writer stroke co-creator Roger Marshall, who of course also created Zodiac, which we liked, didn't we? As well as writing countless other great series during the years you've been looking back on. When he was less involved in some of the later Public Eye series, it lost a bit of its edge, although it was still very watchable. I've been rewatching the Public Eye DVDs with my wife, and I thought it'd be interesting for us to start with one of the earliest surviving episodes, Roger Marshall's The Morning Wasn't So Hot, which I think is only available on the network release of the remaining ABC episodes. Although it isn't the earliest episode in existence, I seem to remember it was specifically produced as an episode that could be shown first in some ITV regions, and it really does work as an introduction. It definitely worked for my wife. She now loves the series as much as I do. From a Doctor Who watcher's point of view, it has the extra interest of featuring Carol Ann Ford and Philip Maddock in the main guest roles. So, if you ever decide to watch a Public Eye episode for the podcast, I'd recommend this one. The picture quality is fairly hideous, but I think you'd cope. This leads to another suggestion that I feel pretty certain would appeal to you both. Enemy at the Door.
Watched it the other day. Watched that first episode the other day.
Set during the German occupation of Guernsey, which is one of the Channel Islands, between England and France, for those who don't know. It shared some of the production team of Public Eye, as well as co-starring Alfred Burke. Amazing to watch it now, bearing in mind it was primetime weekend viewing on ITV back in the late 70s, given the subject matter and the tone of some episodes. I imagine Nick is familiar with this series already. I am familiar with it, yes. Definitely worth considering, I think. Oh, I might have to get that. I'll leave it there. Good. Work to do, but I imagine I'll write again if I get any more notions for you. Thanks, Richard. We appreciate that. Best wishes, says Richards, says Richards. Best wishes, says Richard Black. Thank you, Richard.
It's funny, actually, you mentioned about Brighton, Richard, because I was in Brighton a couple of days ago. I went to see a band last week. And when I was walking around Brighton, I actually thought of Public Eye. You know, I just did, because we were right down by the venue is called a place called Concord 2, which is right in an ancient old part of the Brighton seafront, just overlooking the sea, and I thought of that title sequence. Just picturing Nick throwing stones on the beach in a coat. So the next email here we've got is from Laura Valensky, sent on the 2nd of the 12th, 2018 at 3:19. So that is that. I suppose that's our time, isn't it? But it'd be different time,
she probably wasn't up at 3 in the morning. Ideas for podcasts. She says, yes.
Interesting. So here we go. I'm always so envious of the listeners who manage to come up with cool questions, which seems like everyone. So I think I finally have some.
Oh, good. Here we go.
Will the B&N show ever cover movies? I'm always fascinated by movies that are remakes versus the originals. Although the originals usually win out as the best, like The Day the Earth Stood Still or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, with its many versions. I guess comparing the two would take a lot of time and commitment from you both, so perhaps not.
Interesting, though, isn't it?
It is interesting. I think that is.
Have you seen all the versions of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, for example?
I've not. I think I've seen the original, and that's as far as it's gone.
The black and white one.
The black and white one, yeah.
Because the 70s one is pretty darn good, you know.
Really?
With, Donald Sutherland and Leonard Nimoy, and it's a good film.
Well, maybe we could start up a sort of movie special thing, maybe. I don't know.
Because we've done the Doctor Who movies, haven't we?
We have. Maybe we could do, like, the monthly movie.
Oh, that sounds far too organised.
It does sound far too
Anyway,
organised.
sorry, I interrupted you mid-email.
Yeah, definitely, that's food for thought there, Laura. Carrying on with the email here, it says, and is there a place that you could list your ratings from the year of podcasts? I've never heard of some of the shows you speak of, as I grew up in the stodgy old USA in the 70s and 80s. My husband is from Ukraine, so I'm always telling him about shows from my NY youth he has never heard of. So I now have a similar experience in this podcast. Love the podcast, keep up with the ramblings, and buck up, partner. Winky face. Laura Valensky there from Columbus, Ohio, USA.
Shows from I think it's just from my youth.
I think it's a typo. Yeah, I wasn't sure though. In case it was
my NY youth, my New York youth.
That's never know. But
have you seen The Day the Earth Stood Still as well?
Yeah, I've seen The Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah,
the remake with Keanu Reeves is.
I don't watch remakes. I just don't do it. Just don't do it. If you like something, keep it in your mind. Look what happened with War of the Worlds.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, it's War of the Worlds.
I didn't think it was actually that bad looking back. I think I like the sound of it.
Which one are you talking
about? The movie with Tom Cruise.
War of the Worlds. Oh yeah, I mean it had good aspects in it. I mean that wasn't a remake though, was it? It was just because the original wasn't the proper adaptation. I mean War of the Worlds has not had a proper on-screen accurate adaptation ever done. I mean there's a BBC one coming up at some point that they were trailing ages ago, but I can only imagine it's got into some dreadful trouble because it still hasn't emerged.
Yeah, that's a weird one, isn't it, really?
I mean they trailed it as part of the autumn season on the BBC and it's just never happened. It's
sort of vanished. It's been swept under the carpet a bit, hasn't it? I have to look up, see what's happening with that.
Yeah, look it up now.
But we should probably consolidate the rating, shouldn't we, into one?
Well, that would involve going back and listening to all our podcasts.
It would do, but you know, it's where we would put them as well. I mean, I'm sure it's something that could be done relatively quickly. The thing is, we both give separate ratings sometimes, don't we?
Well, I know. There would have to be 2 lists.
But, leave it with us. We'll have a think.
Yeah.
And see what we can do, because there might be something.
What have you come up with, by the way?
8th of November 2018. When is the War of the Worlds on TV? Bug off. Sorry, not you guys. just pop-ups.
Yeah. What?
I'm reading it. It's a long article.
Oh, get to the facts.
When is the War of the Worlds on TV? The show's announced spring 17 and production began in April 18. An exact air date has not been confirmed, but it's expected to arrive on our screens later in 2018. Well, that didn't happen.
That's not happened.
Although, to be fair, they filmed it. It's got Robbie Carlyle's in it, and interesting.
Sounds to me like it's got into trouble. Otherwise, they would have scheduled it by now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a...
Anyway, maybe I'm casting nasturtiums. Next one, sympathetic Columbo murderers. This was sent on the 2nd of December at 15:27 by Adam Graham to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. Dear Nick and Benji, thank you for your great Columbo podcast. Pity about the first version being lost, though. Yes, don't tell me. That was just like the most unbearable thing.
That was so sad. Because I
haven't recorded it. Oh!
It was just such a good review we did as well, wasn't it? We really went to town.
But the redone version was pretty good because we just remembered everything. We said it more concisely the second time round.
True,
actually.
Yeah.
So we may have thought the first one was better, but I think the second one probably was better. Nick was right that Columbo generally didn't feature murderers you would sympathise with, but there were a few exceptions. For example, season 5's The Forgotten Lady, where a fading Hollywood starlet murders her husband, and as the episode goes on, I'm just reading that twice, I don't know why. We come to realise that a huge contributing factor was not only her sadness at being forgotten, but the presence of a brain tumour that will take her life. It's not making her that sympathetic there. Also, in season 7's Try and Catch Me, a mystery writer murders her son-in-law because he murdered her daughter, but she can't prove it. And in the 1993 episode It's All in the Game, Faye Dunaway's character has a sympathetic reason for the murder, but we really don't understand until the end. In addition, the inverted mystery formula, where we see the murder happen at the beginning of the episode, wasn't always used in Columbo. Columbo became a more traditional whodunit for the season 5 episode Last Salute to the Commodore. The inverted mystery formula was regularly messed with during the revived series from 1989 to 2003. Most of these efforts weren't worth remembering, so I won't bother to itemise. Best regards, Adam Graham. One more thing. Hey. Nick made a very interesting comment about Columbo's lack of a regular theme. While I love the iconic themes of many programmes such as Perry Mason or Dragnet, Columbo's lack of an ongoing theme allowed many episodes to have some of their own score and feel to them. Accordingly, given his expressed musical taste, I think Benji would enjoy Now You See Him, yet another season 5 episode which stars Jack Cassidy again as the murderer, but also features some musical bits that will delight him.
I'll have to have a listen. Watch to that.
Sent from inside a wrinkled raincoat.
Oh, I like that. It's funny actually the lack of central theme, because something I've noticed when I was thinking about this after we did the review. Another thing that has a very similar sort of style is Cracker with Robbie Coltrane that, because each individual episode kind of has its own. I mean, it's all done by the same guy, but they've got their own theme to it. I bought the soundtrack actually, which is only available in Germany for some weird reason. But there's some really good different vibes to each episode. So perhaps it's we're missing a trick there. Perhaps more things should be like that. Who knows?
Shall I see if Jamie's available?
Yeah, give him a bell. Are you being served?
He said he might be busy. Could be. I think it's a no-show. Yeah. How long does FaceTime go on ringing? Does it go on forever?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's unavailable.
Oh, well, is that first time?
Yeah, he normally answers and tells us to bog off, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, knickers to him. The main topic, which is London's burning. Benji, I don't think you mentioned the year of this production when we were talking about it earlier on.
I thought it was 1986, wasn't it? London's Burning TV movie.
1986, wow. So how come you encountered it? Because you weren't born until the 1990s, were you?
No, it wasn't. A strange one. Sort of multiple things. So first and foremost, it was the 7th of December 1986. I remember London's Burning being on. It was always on a Sunday, and I remember that. And at the time when I was younger, I didn't think anything of it because it just looked like something like The Bill, like those sort of. Oh, here's one about nurses. Here's one about policemen. This one's about firemen. And it was only years later when there was a girl that I was seeing when I worked in the mother and baby hospital, who said, because everybody knows I love old stuff, she said, "Oh, I'm surprised you haven't seen London's Burning. It's really good." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I went home and found a copy of it online and watched the TV movie, and I was just blown away by how brilliant it was and how much I liked the characters and the music and the feel, and I just thought it was a really great one-off thing, and I was hooked. And so straight away I bought the box set of it there, and it grew and grew and grew, and it was something that myself and Crystal D, who does the BBC fan show stuff, or did, she doesn't do it anymore, but I told her about it, and she did the same, and it became a bit of an obsession for us both. But I love this series. There's an awful lot of it, which is nice, but there's something about the era in which it was made, and it's real drama. That's what I like. It's drama with a lovely splash of character comedy in there as well.
They certainly, did they intend to make a series, or did they intend to just make a film?
I think from what I gather, this is just like a one-off TV drama. That was the idea. And it came back, I think 2 years later is when it got its series. But I think it was a huge success. I think that was the thing, is that it, because the thing about London's Burning that made it so good was that they went to an extreme level of realism and detail in the way that they tried to portray fires and the fire services responsible, and actually a lot of the. Well, I don't put this down, but there's certainly my interpretation from watching a behind the scenes thing is that technology developed for this series was kind of pioneering in ways in which you could film in fire environments.
Wow. Because
they had to develop ways to get around like the smoke and the lights, and they had to develop ways.
Certainly the fire stuff is beautifully, effectively and shockingly portrayed.
It doesn't hold back, I think, at this series. So that's why I really wanted to suggest it at some point, because I thought it's the type of thing that I think you would appreciate the way the drama, the way it's told. And so I'm intrigued to see your take of what you enjoyed about it and what you perhaps didn't.
Well, the bottom line is that I actually ended up loving it. But I have mixed feelings about it in that at the time it was was when I was, a young adult. I was in my 20s. And this wasn't the kind of drama for someone of that age. This was more for my parents to watch. But what it was doing also was it was trying to show some of the really more serious issues being confronted by British society, certainly London, hence the title London's Burning. You see, it's a double-edged thing. It's to do with there being fires in London, but it's also to do with the social problems in London, and there's an awful lot about sexism and racism in it. But because it was made in 1986, a lot of the way it's dealt with is very uncomfortable and / inappropriate now.
Definitely, yeah.
They're clearly saying that racism is a bad thing, but there's overt use of racist language, and some of the characters who are meant to be sympathetic use racist epithets to people in a way that is meant to kind of be funny, whereas now,
totally,
a generation or so later, it's like a slap in the face to watch something like that. You think, oh no, you can't say that. That's, and even though they portray the police as a real bunch of horrible racists, and several reports on the Met Police have since spoken about institutionalized racism, and here it is shown, if you pardon the awful pun, in black and white, with white police officers on the beat using openly appalling racist language. And the thing is, though, watching this drama, it probably wasn't that shocking at the time, because people would use those words, and I'm obviously not using them now. I would be ashamed to do so. So it's an interesting historical social document from that point of view. The same stuff with sexism as well. Even though it's clearly anti-sexist, it's sexist in the way it portrays it because of the assumptions of the time. So you have fire officer, what's her name? I can't remember.
Ingham. Josie Ingham.
Josie Ingham, joins, and it's a woman in the fire brigade, and everyone's shocked, and they say, oh, I joined the fire brigade to get away from them, they say beforehand, and we don't know who they're talking about.
Yeah, I like that touch. I thought that was clever.
And it's a woman, and they're appalled, and she has to sort of show she's as good as them, and all this stuff, and it's just, and immediately she has some romantic sort of interest in one of the characters, and it breaks up. It's starting to make fault lines appear in her marriage. But again, we're meant to sort of sympathise with some of the sexist things that are being said, aren't we? We're meant to be half on the side of the guys who say the terrible sexist things. We're meant to be thinking, oh well, it's no big deal, and she's taking it on the chin, and all that. And there's also one other thing I want to say on the sort of social issues thing, is that all the wives of the firemen meet up twice a year for an awkward cup of tea and cake, and they don't really get on. And so the husband of Ingham goes along, and he just turns up and says, all right, I've turned up for the orgy. And this scene, which is full of women, and I think only two of them speak, and he gets to make a huge speech to them, sort of mansplaining everything. It's like the author, quite a progressive author, Jack Rosenthal, thought, oh well, I've got a scene full of women, but I can't actually have the women speak. I must just have a man express what's going on. I thought that was quite awkward. That said, I thought it's because of all those things, it had a creaky start for me, but it's very well made. It's shot on 16mm, so it's a bit grainy, but it's got good production values, and you really do warm to the characters and the stress and the danger of the situations. The terrible fire in the middle with a child
horrific,
dies.
Yeah.
I was bawling my eyes out at that. I really was.
It's just really acted well, isn't it? From the mother, I think, who's distraught. And
also James Hazeldine as Bayleaf, who completely loses his temper with her because her children have basically, two of them have been scarred for life, and one of them has been killed because she decided to go out for a disco and leave young children in a house, and he says the most awful things to her, doesn't he? And they try to restrain him, and he just completely loses it. I mean, if someone in the fire brigade did that now, they'd be up on a charge, but this was 1986, so it's all right to scream abuse at the public.
I mean, the thing actually interesting you talk of that is that one of the things that I really like about this series is the way actually that it's quite a good example of documenting and mapping social change, because this first episode, with all the things that you just described, is a real, you're in the thick of all of this horrible sort of racist, sexist sort of aspect of things, and as the series goes on, these things, it starts to become more acceptable, and things in that environment change to the point where, I mean, in series 2, not giving it away, basically you meet this horrible man who's in another fire station, who he ends up basically killing and bullying this no, he doesn't kill him, he attempts to kill this black guy, and basically it's so bad, and the whole kind of series arc is about how he's put on a charge, and eventually he loses his job, and they say none of this is ever happening again. And from that point onwards, then it's used as an example to move forward. but it's done in a way that you really think you could, that is a real example. You think this guy is a horrible man, utterly, and played really well, to be fair, because you really don't like him at all. But yeah, as the series goes on, it's like smoking. They're all smoking cigarettes in this.
Yes.
Yet by the end of the 90s, they're not allowed to smoke, and I think halfway through they're giving up because they're told they should give up, and so regulations and times change with it. I think that's what's interesting when you do watch the whole lot, and it's great. I would say it's really good up until about series 9, I'd say, where it starts to lose its feet a little bit. But yeah, I love the characters.
What goes wrong, do you think?
That's my thing. I love all of the characters.
What goes wrong?
It becomes a little bit more soapy. A lot of the regulars that you've warmed to leave, and you kind of you don't get the same level of people coming back that you can warm to the same. So I think the longest, there are 2 that lasted pretty much until the end, which is Hallam, who is the John Hallam, who is the second in command, the sub.
Oh yeah.
And is he even in this one? No, he's not actually. You get gosh, what's his name?
Bayleaf goes, does he?
Bayleaf goes later on, but he's in it for a long time, and he has a great run actually. He really does, and when he leaves, it's about the right time. But it's like this love thing with Josie and Bayleaf that goes on for a long time, and then not a lot happens, but things are then suddenly. It's well worth. Certainly, series 1 is a really easy watch. It's 6 episodes, and they're all brilliant. Every single one is just. There's some cracking music in there as well. But like Richard's sick note lasts, I think, until the end as well. Richard Walsh's.
What about Charisma? Charisma's the most awkward character, the guy who makes up all these friends that he doesn't really have. It's just
the snooker tournament.
All the characters have nicknames which are inappropriate, stroke appropriate. Like the black character's called Ethnic. What do they end up calling Josie?
She doesn't actually. I don't even think she actually gets a name in the end, really.
Because they're voting on it at the end of this, aren't they? They're voting on what her nickname could be,
and
she
remember.
Really takes them to task over it. She's just great as well. It's a lovely performance. She is
a fantastic actor as well. She plays it really well. There's that great scene midway where she just says, "Look," she said, "I'm not a dyke. I'm not different to any." These are her words. She said, "I'm not a dyke. I'm not different to any of you. I just, a couple of days a week." I'm really good at fighting fires.
Well, she just explains everything. This is when the lights go out and they're all sleeping in the same room. She just goes, right. So she just explains herself to them all, because they've all been muttering and, and they watch a porn movie to try and shock her, don't they? And she comes and sits and watches it. And I can't tell you what she says at the end, but she just says, "Oh, well, I've seen it."
Yeah. She's and like the way she tackles Vaseline, Mark Arden's character, who's he's not horrible because you kind of like him. He's like a lovable, absolutely horrible idiot.
He is totally racist.
He's not. He is nasty. He's sexist as well, isn't he? He's
meant to be funny, you see, and you just think, oh, I'm not sure that's right.
He's a useless bloke, and he gets his. He certainly gets his comeuppance, but later on you've got James Marcus as the head Tate. What's his first name in it? Not Jeffrey. Sidney Tate, and he's great. And it's just a great. I think it's all the people they've cast like Charisma in there who does a couple of series, leaves, and then comes back. And is just as good he just comes back for no real reason for a series. He's like, "Oh, do you fancy doing another run?" He's like, "Yeah, all right, I'll come back, do that," But they're all great. That's what I love about it. The team is brilliant, and people leave come back.
You clearly have a lot of affection for the series.
I do, yeah.
It's really interesting since it's not, to me it wasn't. I remember I had to review a bunch of episodes for a magazine once, and I was sent some VHSs, but that might have been quite late on. It's interesting, isn't it? But I would certainly give it 4 exclamation marks.
I can only give it 5 because I love it. I can say as well, actually, interestingly enough, the reason I think I love it is because I feel it's become a bit of a forgotten gem, and I think what it became has kind of tarnished. It's like it's
well, and also, but in these early days, with the whole business of it trying to tackle social issues, which I think it does for its time very successfully, it just makes it very awkward watching now.
Definitely,
because of the kind of language it uses and the kind of judgments it makes. I don't think there's any offensive intent, but it's a bit like hearing your grandmother talk about racism.
Definitely. I think it's tackling an issue, but perhaps a bit too on the nose in terms of probably at the time people thought nothing of it, but in retrospect, I think it's a bit too on the nose.
I think it was challenging and probably helped to change attitudes.
I think that the whole of the series, I think, really is about tackling things and changing attitudes and adapting to the time. Really,
it's very mainstream. I think that's another thing to say about it. This was highly rated mainstream primetime drama, wasn't it? So I think it was quite brave, given that that's it, the context of it.
Definitely, So yeah, for me, it's a 5. If I was to say one more thing I love about it is the music. Because the music is just great for so long in it. In this particular episode, it's just done on the Yamaha DX7. But then, as it goes on, they get the Roland out, the Roland D50. Just getting boring now, but it's really good.
It's not boring.
It's so good.
I really don't think the music's great. I think the music is awful.
It's awfully brilliant, though.
Yeah,
it's so
but
of its
that's
time.
It, yeah.
It's so of its
exactly.
time.
It's perfectly. At the time, it was at the cutting edge of dramatic music on television. To do stuff like this, it was quite new and innovative. But it just sounds so plinky and.
Series 1 though. You wait, the saxophone comes out. That's where it.
Oh well, that's what it was famous for. The saxophone.
The saxophone
wasn't it?
comes out, and
then
bang! You've got like a straight 7 series of just loads of. But yeah, you can check it out. It's on London Live. I think they show it in the mornings. It's got a huge amount of.
That you can only see that if you live in London. Live.
Well, I think it's also now on Watch as well. It's got a bit of a second wind coming on. But yeah, check it out. If not just for series 1, 2, and 3, which are cracking. There we go.
Might do that. Thank you very much, Benji. Really, I'm really relieved that I did enjoy it. 10 minutes in, I thought, oh goodness.
Yeah,
but it grew on me, and it was delightful and yeah, and really well made. Shot on film, single camera, good editing, all that nonsense. It wasn't like you said it was like The Bill. It's not like The Bill at all. The Bill looks sort of tacky and studio bound.
Later on, it looks tacky and studio bound. They always filmed it on location because you can visit. Not anymore, sadly, because it's been demolished, but they've rebuilt a new fire station. But up until about 3 or 4 years ago, you could visit the fire station. It was exactly the same. Wow. It hadn't changed at all. And now they've
Blackwall, isn't it?
It's not actually Blackwall. Although it's Blackwall in this, it's actually somewhere else, and I can't remember where. It's like over towards the Shadwell sort of way.
Okay. But in London, yeah.
It's in London. It's a tube journey away, but it's still quite good to go and see. They've kept some of the aspects of it. The doors are still very similar. Yeah. Anyway, I could talk about this forever. I'm very aware that well, it started in 1986. I think you'll find that when Kate comes in series 3, replaces Josie, but then Josie comes back. I'm just going on now. Sorry. Right.
I could go on. Please don't.
Well,
yes. So there you go. Nice. What are we going to surprise ourselves with?
Well, I did have an idea because something popped up just in between recording this podcast and the Big Finish podcast. And I thought, that could be a fun one. And let me just get it up here. So, it's on my YouTube history because suspense here is killing us.
Yeah. I'm going to
Escape into Night.
Oh.
Is it very good or not? 'Cause somebody said it had a very unnerving opening episode or something.
You've forgotten, I told you about this months back. Let's definitely do it. I've got it on DVD. It is, it's a great idea. It's based on a novel called I can't remember now. Can you look it up? What's it based on? Paper.
The 1986 series London's Burning.
No.
Hold on. Escape into Night.
Paper something.
Escape into Night. Created by Catherine Storr. Who did what? Come on.
It's a novel. It's based on a novel because there was a film of it as well. And the film was
Paper House.
Paper House. Thank you. I thought I'd gone mad then. Yes, it's based on Paper House, and the problem with it is, but we must watch it. Is the child acting in it is dreadful.
Oh God.
I mean, execrable. It's awful.
It's one of my pet peeves, but okay.
Yeah, it's and I loved it as a kid. I found it very unnerving, and it's worth trying to watch more than one episode because it gets more and more interesting. But there's a particularly bad performance that, when I tried to watch it again, was like destroying all my enjoyment. But yeah, let's do Escape into Night.
God, exciting! Right, well, on that bad bombshell, let us get close to the microphones here and.
Yes.
Have a chat. So, from me, Benji, it's goodbye.
From me, Nick, it's goodbye. Pressing stop now. Ka-chink. Ka-chunk. Ka-chunk. I can't remember what I say now. It's ka-chunk.
Ka-chunk, isn't it? Yeah.
Ka-chink. Ka-chunk. Ka-chink. Ka-chunk.